Are you trying to decide whether or not you should install a hard-mounted mobile radio into your vehicle or just use handhelds for communications when you're out on the trail or on your overland adventures? Well, there's pros and cons to each. We're going to cover that and talk a little bit about GMRS radios specifically, and I'm going to show you how to install one, how easy it is to do on this Ford Bronco here today. Pretty easy day in the garage, but we're going to learn a lot. Stay tuned. Welcome to Trail Recon, I'm Brad, and today I'm in the garage and I'm going to install a mobile GMRS radio into my Ford Bronco. But while we're doing it specifically in the Ford Bronco, it really applies to many different vehicles. You could do the same thing in a Jeep or a Toyota 4Runner. The process is very similar. It's just mounting locations could be different and your wiring could be a little different, but it's a very easy install. But before we dive into doing that install, I want to talk about a couple things. One, just a few months ago, I talked about different communication options for when you're out on your off-road adventures. You know, there's CB, there's ham radio, there's GMRS, there's a bunch of other options out there. I've been a ham operator for about 4 or 5 years now. I have my GMRS license. I have shifted to primarily GMRS. That's why I'm installing this GMRS radio today. I still carry a ham, but the majority of folks today are shifting over to GMRS, and so that just makes sense to me. But if you're trying to decide on what communications might be best for you, two things that you may want to do. One, go watch that video, and two, find out what the people in your local area are using. Maybe everybody in your area is primarily using CB, and that would make more sense. Now, when it comes to GMRS radios, this is very easy to use and it's very simple to get authorization to use this. Now, all you need to do to get your license for a GMRS is go on to the FCC website, register and pay a fee, and then you are eligible for the next 10 years to use a GMRS radio. And when your family is with you, they are able to use it as well. So for me, for example, when I go out on the trails and my wife Regina is following me in her vehicle, I can hand her a handheld radio. I've got a handheld radio and we can talk back and forth, and we are both abiding by the FCC regulations. Now, I plan on doing a hard-mounted radio in my vehicle and hers, and here's why. Handheld radios are a great option. One, they're a little more affordable. Two, they're small and compact, but there are some downfalls to them. One, you can see how small that antenna is. Well, you're not going to be able to transmit and receive all with that small antenna very efficiently. Plus, the power rating in these is pretty low compared to the amount of power that we're going to be able to get out of the mobile unit that's going to be installed in there. The other thing with this is the minute you get inside of your vehicle, you've now reduced that ability to transmit and receive, because now you have the vehicle kind of blocking your line of sight, and so it can actually limit things a little bit. It's great to have handhelds. I carry handhelds with me everywhere I go, even if I have a hard-mounted one, because there's some really good benefits to that. Because if somebody comes out with us and they don't have maybe the specific type of comms that we're using, all I can do is hand them a radio and be like, here you go, now you can talk to us. It's an easy day. The other thing is, when you are outside the vehicle, if you need to spot, you know, hand signals are great, yelling is great, but being able to talk to somebody on the radio as you're guiding them through an obstacle can be really beneficial. And for me, on a personal level, I'm always filming, and so it's always nice to be able to grab a handheld radio and go grab the camera and be able to speak with the convoy. So that works out really well. Oh, another con, battery. You are not going to get more than about a day out of one of these. So if you're going to be on a multiple day trip, you're going to need to have a way to recharge these at the end of the day or bring extra batteries. Now, with our built-in device, we get a lot of benefits, but there's a couple cons. Some of the benefits are, one, it's got a lot more power, so we are going to be able to send a stronger signal. Two, the antenna is going to be mounted outside of the vehicle, so it's going to be able to transmit and receive much clearer than trying to communicate on the inside of the vehicle. The other benefit is this is not running off of a battery. Well, it's running off the car's battery, but you're going to have power all the time when you need it for long trips. And when the vehicle's running, this thing can be turned on and you can be transmitting and receiving all day long. So that's perfect. The other thing is, it's really easy to install. We're going to be able to do this here today pretty quick. It's not going to take much time at all. So let me talk about everything we got here, and then we'll open up the Bronco, and I got to kind of figure out where I want to put this. So we'll talk about some different options where we can mount the head unit inside the vehicle and where we can mount this. So first, let's talk about what we got here. Now, I know this looks like a lot, but don't let it intimidate you. This is all very simple, and we're not even using all of this. So what we're installing today is the Midland Micro Mobile GMRS radio, and this is the head unit. You can see how small that is. It fits in the palm of my hand, and the great thing about having this nice and small is you can tuck this into some creative places, and we're going to talk about some options on where we can mount this, and then I think I have an idea where I want to put this already. But the great thing is that there's no buttons, there's no power, there's nothing on this, so we don't need to be able to access this every time we use it. We just need to be able to get our handheld unit in. So the handheld unit has the power button, it's got the volume, it's got the ability to change all your channels and all your different modes. And so I think we're gonna have a pretty good place to mount this. I'm not sure 100% yet, but I have this little magnetic cell phone mount, which I think might work perfectly. Now, what else do we have here? We have some wire because I'm going to route the power for this unit directly to the battery, but you could run this to a 12-volt cigarette style lighter outlet if you wanted to, but I like going straight to the battery. We've got two different types of antennas here. Let me talk about this one first, because this one actually came with this kit. So this has a big old magnetic base on it. And that's a great option if you just want to temporarily put it on the roof of your vehicle or on the hood of your car. But here's the problem. I have a soft top, so that's not going on the roof. And the Bronco and the Wranglers have composite hardtops, so that's not going to stick to them either. And the hoods on both the new model Wrangler and the Bronco, well, guess what? They're aluminum. So this is not an option for us today. What we're going to be using is actually a antenna mount that I've used for years on several vehicles. It's just one I like, and this is from a company called Diamond, and I will leave links for everything below. But we're going to use this mount, and then we're going to use this very small Stealth Midland antenna. I like this thing because it's really low profile and it'll stay out of the way. So other than some other odds and bits here we'll talk about as we get doing the install, that's all there is to it. This is going to be pretty simple and pretty straightforward. All right, now for what's probably the hardest part of this entire install, which isn't really hard at all, but it's figuring out where you want to mount your head unit. And so there's a couple options, and we'll talk about some pros and cons of each of them. One, you could mount this under the seat, although there's not really a good area under the Bronco seat. The problem with putting it under the seat is if you decide to maybe take the doors off or take the top off and go through a water crossing or something and get some water in here, you could damage the radio. So I have had a radio under my Jeep before, under the seat of my Jeep before, it was no problems. I'm not going to do that here. Another option is maybe to pull some of this plastic out from underneath the dash and find a good spot where this will fit, because you could probably find a few spots, but it's a little fidgety, and getting it mounted up there nice makes it a little challenging. There's some easier solutions. One, the center console, it would fit very nicely in here, and guess what? There's a 12-volt power outlet in here, so you could plug it in for your power right there. The only thing is you need to route your antenna as well, and that would require drilling a hole somewhere in there and then routing it along here and all the way to the front to get your antenna up there. That's not a complicated way to do it. You could do that if that's where you want to have it. And what I like about the Bronco, there's actually this little slit right here which would work perfectly for having the microphone just kind of lay through, so you could still have the microphone in here and close that up. So that works pretty well. But then the question is, where are you going to put the microphone? Some people don't mind putting it in the cup holder. That's not for me. Another option, and this one is a pretty good one, and I've mounted it in two vehicles this way, and that is to mount it either on the side of the center console on the passenger or the driver's side. It actually doesn't look aesthetically bad, and if you mount it correctly, it's not going to be in the way. Now, you want to check clearance with a couple things. One, wherever you decide to put it, you want to move the seat forward and back just to make sure that you can push the seat all the way forward, so you may need to move this forward a little bit more. And the other thing is put it in here and then just kind of move your legs around and make sure that it doesn't interfere with kind of your normal comfort. I've had it here on the passenger side on one of my vehicles for a long time, and Regina doesn't even notice it's there half the time, and that works out pretty well. But I think what I'm going to do is install it in the glove box because it fits perfectly right here on the side of the glove box, and I can route the wires, I can route the antenna and the microphone all right over the top of the glove box. There's plenty of room over there when the glove box is fully open, and I still have plenty of space to put all my papers and gear that I need to in the glove box. And the great thing about if you want to put it in the glove box or you want to put it in the center console is that everything is built into the microphone, including the speaker. So we don't need to worry about having to listen for a speaker on the head unit. The speaker is built into this. So now, how am I going to mount this into the glove box? Well, I actually thought, you know, I'll put a couple screws through the mounting plate and just put that on the side, but there's really not a lot of tolerance from the edge of the glove box to the actual gap where it closes. And so, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to use some heavy-duty double-sided tape. I'll clean it with some alcohol and put that in there, and we'll see how that holds, because at the end of the day, it's in the glove box. So if that double-sided tape lets go, well, no harm, no foul. I'll just figure out another solution later on, but I'm going to give that a go. So let's get this inside. I'll start wiring everything up, and we'll route the wires up and through the firewall, and then I'll show you kind of what I have in store for mounting the microphone. There are not a lot of options in the Bronco, but I think I came up with a pretty good one. Now that we know where our head unit is going, now I just got to route all the wires. And so we've got to run the wire for the antenna, and the mounting point for the antenna, the wire is affixed to that. So the antenna wire has to go from the outside in, and then we have the power wire and the ground, and they are both fused. And so we're going to route those through a little rubber grommet in the firewall. And big kudos to Ford. There is a very nice, easy to access grommet that it almost seems like this is exactly what it's for, because the auxiliary switches that I have in the Bronco, all the wires for them, they're right there next to this grommet. So I think they were thinking that, hey, if people were putting accessories inside, this is a great way to do it. Now, I am not going to mount the radio to a switch. I just think it's better to run the power from the radio directly to the battery. That way it doesn't create any interference. But I'm going to get a little X-Acto knife, just make a little slit in that guy, and route these through. Easy day. All right, so that grommet is very thick, thicker than I expected, so you have to work a little bit to cut that. But then I was able to route our positive and negative wire and our antenna wire. So we are good to go. I think I've got enough length here. So the goal here is to go back behind and over the footwell here, and then up to the glove box, make our connections, plug in the antenna, and then mount the antenna up on the hood, and we'll give it a test. I think we're just about done, guys. All right, perfect. I dropped the glove box all the way down. There's two little tabs on the back of the glove box that allows you to open it all the way up. And then I routed the wires right over the top, and they're going to drop right into the glove box where our head unit is going to be. It's going to be perfect. This is going to be pretty clean. Now, one thing to mention about wiring is just take your time and make sure that you're not routing the wire or the antenna anywhere where it's going to interfere with anything, and it's not going to get rubbed down and cause a grounding issue later. And then get yourself a good pair of wire strippers and crimpers. And I am a fan of these little butt connectors, which have the little heat shrink on them. This makes everything nice and clean. It's going to look really good when it's all said and done. So let me get this all buttoned up, and then I will show you how to mount the antenna to the hood. Now, I have been using this antenna mount for, I don't know, about almost 6 years, I think, on the JK, and it has held up perfect to all the abuse that it has taken. So I'm a big fan of these guys. There's a lot of adjustability in here if you have a different situation that you want to put them on, but here on the hood, I'm just going to leave it as is. Now, there are 4 little tiny bolts on here that will get tightened up against this aluminum plate, and that will get put in there like that. And then this base here is really nice because it's padded, it's all rubberized. And so we're just going to slide this right over the hood and then tighten up those 4 little bolts, and that will secure it into place. And we just need to figure out how far out or in we want it to. One thing to think about is if you put it too far in, you will get a little bit of interference from your A-pillar and windshield, but it'll probably still work just fine, especially if you have a long, tall antenna. Ours is going to be kind of short, so I'm probably going to have it, I don't know, somewhere right about there. I think it'll be perfect. And you can mount this on the driver's side if you want, but I like having it over on the passenger side, just a personal preference for me. Antenna's on, wiring's done, the head unit's where I want it to be. Now we just got to figure out where to put the handset. And this one, I spent a lot of time in here just kind of placing it all over the place and then reaching my hand out and just seeing what is comfortable. And honestly, the Bronco doesn't have a lot of great places to put this thing. And you don't want to put it somewhere where it's going to block buttons or it's going to block the screen, and you don't want it somewhere where it's out of reach and it's not going to mess with your passenger. There's a lot to think about in that, and I think I came up with a solution. It's going to block a little bit of the vent, but this little magnetic phone mount will fit perfectly right there. And if I adjust this correctly, because this has a little swivel on it, if I can adjust that correctly, I should be able to mount the hand unit right there. That's going to be perfect. I got to take the back off this and attach the little metal plate to make that a magnet. I'll clean this with some alcohol, and fingers crossed that will stick and hold there. If not, I will have to come up with a plan B. Now, one thing to think about is this is not long enough to drop down and go up and behind into the glove box where our head unit is. So I did buy a little bit of network cable extension. So I'm just going to drop that down and get this all routed up. But fingers crossed that this holds on the plastic, and that should be a pretty good place to mount this. All right, I've got everything wired up. I connected it to the battery. Our antenna is connected. Our head unit is all mounted. And I'm pretty happy with where I've got the handheld microphone. Let's see if it works. Regina, how do you read me?
I read you loud and clear.
I read you the same. Awesome. Guys, this was a super easy install, and now I have a mobile GMRS radio in the Bronco, and I don't have to worry about batteries, and I'm going to have great transmission and reception when I'm out on the trail, and I'm pretty happy with how that all worked out. If you want to check out any of the stuff that I used here, I will leave links down below for everything. A lot of that stuff you'll be able to find out over on trailrecon.com, so make sure you go over there and check us out. And if you are visiting this channel for the very first time, hit that subscribe button. You'll enjoy the content we've got coming up here, where we're going to be doing some great adventures and some more work here on this Bronco. Hope you've enjoyed hanging out with me in the garage today. Thanks for watching.